Good evening and welcome to this week's Joko conversation. I am Brother Youssef, happy to be here with you, a poet and a professor in the Los Angeles area. Somebody trying to make a contribution, and I am here with my partner and my comrade, Tasha. Hi, Tasha.
Hi, Yusuf, and greetings, everybody. Um, and we start our discussions, our program with me doing our invocation and acknowledgement of the energies that we want to bring to the forefront, and the energies that we're trying to walk with and be guided by, and uh, be always in the energies of. And so we salute our parenting forces, the energies and our ancestors and our personal lineage, uh, through whose values and vision and proclivities and all of the things that they've brought, um, to our understanding and to our maturing and to our becoming folk that have led us to become people that choose to be part of making the world a just place and a good place for humans and all sentient beings to be existing in, right? Um, we acknowledge and present ourselves as right in the lineage and uh, of the African global family. We're children of Africa, and certainly at our age, mothers and grandmothers and fathers and grandfathers, um, in the African family, who boasts so many champions of that same goal to upend the structures that have brought so much misery to the planet and to so many um, people and other sentient beings. And certainly we extol and exalt our members of the African global family who have brought their courage and creativity and vision and um, all of those kinds of energies to bear upon the problem and have led humanity to major solutions along the path. And we always um, assert that any work that we do for the liberation of the African global family, for the liberation of all oppressed peoples, we do in these lands that we live in, unceded lands of the First Nations peoples, us specifically in this area of Los Angeles, the Tongva people. Um, and we know that it's at the hospitality of the ancestors of these First Nations people and those who still dare to preserve their sovereignty, rejuvenate and uplift their languages and traditions and cultures, applying their principles, um, and living their realities and reclaiming their lands and their stewardship duties and work. We know that any work we do is at their hospitality. We have no illusions of nativity by any by any means, right?
Mhm.
Um, Either we understand that we came as cargo and as merchandise of the settler colonialists, right, or the settler colonists, I guess I should say. Um, and so we always start with those acknowledgments. And so I've started with those acknowledgments, and I hand you the mic. good brother Yusuf.
Yes, we do like to acknowledge that. And again, with it not pro forma, land acknowledgement, but a mindfulness, right, of the character of the society we live in as a settler colonial society. Um, whose economy, like the economy of the capitalist world, right, the primitive accumulation is, rooted in that mercantile um, exercise of, human trafficking, right, and for centuries and across the Atlantic and also the Indian Ocean and the Pacific, um, into these Americas and into Europe and even into parts of Asia, and Asians into parts of Africa, right, and
Mm,
etc. The And so, it's political education also, right, as a reminder of, that character of the United States that gets obscured
mm,
and really in this political moment, right, and all the contradictions should be sharpening now, right, um, but the cruel irony, right, of and sort of lack of awareness of the claims of settlers to be natives, right, and the whole notion of the nativist movement. Um, and interesting to me again, because it's folks who those who have been here for generations, right, upon generations, um, and still have memory, living memory, right, and close
mm,
ties with their mother country, right. They're the
mhm,
West, Wessex in England,
mm,
or wherever, right. They might
mm,
be, and any of the other
mhm,
various European
mhm,
homelands, right, of the Euro Americans.
mhm,
Um,
mhm,
and I think about that, and as I am one who deeply appreciates the poetry of Walt Whitman, right,
mhm,
um, and I think about that poem "Song of Myself," where he is it's what, the 1840s or the 1850s, and he's talking about here, he's a son of this soil, the son of parents of this soil, and their parents of the soil, and their parents before them, this going back some generations, right. Um, and fine, right, but we also know, and in this moment, right, at the same time that there's that, a newly muscular, and maybe it's always been muscular, but it's just more prominent again in the public sphere, um, white nativist narrative, of their country. I mean, going back to 2008, right, with the election of the Democrat Barack Obama, a sector of the white population has been talking about taking back their country, right, and that has for as long as I can remember, been also part of the anti-immigration, the anti-immigrant rhetoric. At least again, my
mhm,
becoming conscious of it in the early 1980s, in my young adulthood, and hearing people talk about wanting, their country, being invaded, right, and or
mm,
all these foreigners, right, and of course at the time,
mm,
um, because Japan was, so successfully competing, particularly with the car industry. There was a lot of that focused on Asian population. Of course, there's always been really, I think, the anxiety, around the Mexican population because there's an awareness, right, right, of the acquisition of northern Mexico, right, through war. and under what came to be called
Mm.
gun diplomacy, right? But under the gun, basically, to sign the treaty. But there's an awareness of that, right? That even if it's not articulated or even necessarily
Mm.
conscious, right? A discomfort with it. So how long, are there stories, right, of the Euro American calling the Mexican, who can also talk about a family being in what's now California or New Mexico or Arizona, Texas, for generations upon generations, right, upon generations,
Mhm.
as somehow a, always a foreigner in the country, always, the perpetual foreigner, um, any really of the
Mhm. Mhm.
non-white,
Mhm.
really any of the non-white population,
Mhm.
with the exception of the indigenous people, the First Nations of North America, that, as you've pointed out before, the myth has to be that they're all gone, right? That they were
Mhm.
wiped out, though
Mhm.
we know that is not the case, right? And of course, many
Mhm.
of the people identified as Mexican are also First Nation, right? So, or have
Mhm.
First Nations, Afro
Mhm.
indigenous,
Mhm.
descendants. And so anyway, all of
Mhm.
that, we don't, it's not pro forma, right? It's political education to recognize that, you know, our ancestors and the ancestors of, where we are, where we do the work. And it is related, to what we're talking about tonight, because all we're really talking about is the news, right? And how it's it's more of the same, as they've done the latest dump of the files, and everybody knows which files we mean, and what it just continues to reveal, not just about the ruling elite in the United States, but internationally, and across all various sectors of society. Um, Whatever the various connections, and what people are doing or not doing, but also what people are willing to overlook or pretend not to see or just hold on to, um, within their circle, right, within their social circle, right, that the effort to protect each other, right, or the maybe that thing, the idea of the gentleman's agreement, right, and it's unspoken, but everybody knows the expectation. And it's just all the more revealed, right? So it's funny in some ways. I mean, this moment, right, is so dangerous and wrought. Um, this could be the thing, right? As so, what is it revealing, right? That Epstein, this guy Jeffrey Epstein, is at the middle of so much, right? So much of the machinations of the ruling classes and interest around the world internationally. I was watching Mike Figueroa, not Figueroa, Figueroa, maybe. I'm sorry, I forget your name, Mike, your last name, and I'm messing it up. But the Humanist Report, looking at connections between Epstein and Bannon and their intentional efforts to radicalize, right
Mhm.
wing radicalize the
Mhm.
gaming spaces, right, and this
Mhm.
4chan space, and the
Mhm.
social media platform,
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
so that this may be the thing that can actually, um, I don't want to overstate it and say topple, but it's making things so stark,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
working classes everywhere are already kind of riled up, and on fashion, right wing populism, takes advantage of that, right? without doesn't offer solutions, right? But these fake solutions. Um, but everybody's able to, see, uh, well, like the title says, right, the depravity, um, and how deep it runs and how wide.
And how wide, the depth and the breadth, right? hmm
Right.
In these classes, in this ruling class, and in this
Yeah.
global ruling class. So it is a lot to digest, but at the same time, it's, as you're saying, as you're, kind of indicating, it having the potential to really topple, if not the structures themselves, the consciousness of the folks.
Yeah. Exactly.
um I was listening to, or I saw a post, I think it's the young man Adam Mockler, who
Mm-hmm.
is quite, worthy to his position, and
Mm-hmm.
handles his his presentation and his channel work, above and beyond, and
Mm-hmm.
competent journalism, and has, earned his invitations into other arenas of, respectable journalism, and, he makes his
Mm-hmm.
commentary, so he's out there, he's built his credibility,
Mm-hmm.
and in presentation as a Democrat, and all of the notions that the Democrat represents a left, and the
Mm-hmm.
GOP represents
Mm-hmm.
right. So
Right.
he posted something today that the caption was, "There's been a shift," and it was very interesting because his energy was very heightened. His energy was very heightened. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't watch the whole
Mm-hmm.
thing, but the essence of what he was saying was that, even if the Republicans are overcome in the election, even if, they get
Mm-hmm.
rid of all of you know all of this regime, and, and get the, upend, um, the control in the Congresses and in the Congress and whatnot, that is not the issue, right? He said the
Mm-hmm.
unpopularity of the, or the, the disdain for the Republicans, becoming disdain for the Republicans, doesn't make the Democrats popular, because they still have no vision. They still aren't saying what needs to be said. Now, he's not
Precisely.
said, he hasn't articulated, at least to the extent that I watched, but I know
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine him at this juncture discussing other philosophies and other approaches, and
Right.
saying something about the next logical step being democratic socialism or what have you, and pointing toward those voices,
Mm-hmm.
um, but the fact that someone in his position, and it's, a fundamentally mainstream position, not a legacy media position, but, I'm saying, a very mainstream politic, um, being in a mode of, I consider myself a Democrat, but the Democrats aren't doing what needs to be done. And what is
Mm-hmm.
needed is a long-term vision for social change.
Mm-hmm.
That is what, I'm saying? So
Yep.
this piece about clarity, all the level of clarity that these exposures, this particular kind of exposure is
Exactly.
bringing, because, it brings together so many elements of the edifice, of this
Mm-hmm.
edifice, so wrapped up
Mm-hmm.
in white supremacy, and all of the isms, right?
Mm-hmm.
The racisms, the sexisms, all of those isms, brings all those things together,
Yeah.
this moment, so that there's this domino. You click one, you wipe them all out. And so, yes, the depravity the level of, because people are absolutely disgusted by what
Disgusting.
they're seeing in these. It's absolutely disgusting, and the
Yes,
class aspect cannot be ignored. It's not,
exactly.
these people having parties with each other that are where they're doing this, doing crazy mess. You know what I'm saying? It's about um praying, right? These people
Preying,
praying
predatory behavior.
on, yes, it's about, and they are preying on uh the quote unquote lower classes.
The
That's,
lower classes, exact, and the most vulnerable among them.
and the most vulnerable among them,
And that's an important
and
aspect of it, right? The because it is
that's
the
an important
power.
aspect of it. Yes, there's absolutely that aspect of, and the story of the, the vulnerability to sex trafficking of
Yeah.
displaced youth,
Yep.
of, youth that are runaways, youth that are,
Hmm.
you know what I'm saying, have a
Hmm.
dysfunctional home experience and whatnot. But then there's
Yes.
also, right, the young people, like when they're talking about the 20-year-olds, that are lured in and sucked in, with the promise of
Hmm.
getting a modeling contract. And, my friend is the guy
Hmm.
who runs
Hmm.
Victoria's Secret, and the
Hmm.
ability to create these scenarios with
Yes.
these, right, for a young
Yep.
person, a young
Yep.
woman. I could
That's
see
like
my daughter.
key, right?
She was
Yeah.
interested in modeling. Your
Yeah.
daughter
Hmm.
is interested in modeling as a younger person. You know what I'm saying? She could easily be lured in. So it has, you know what I'm saying? And it's not because there's a
Well,
dysfunction or a displacement. You know what I'm saying?
it's
But there
how it
is,
works.
it's how it works, right? And the kinds of dreams of stardom and big time and that poor people have. And by poor, let us just mean that folks, no one who is not independently wealthy. You know what I'm
Everybody
saying? Or
who's not independently wealthy, exactly.
wealthy
Everybody
and
who's
with
selling their
disparity
labor
figures
and their time, right, to make a living.
and increasingly as the opportunities for professional advancement and social mobility tend to, right, there is that the whole disparity thing, so
Hmm.
anyway, all of that just is to say
Hmm.
the all the different avenues that are available to
Yeah.
manipulate, young, the young
Yeah.
people, not
Yeah.
members of the ruling classes, not members of, you know what I'm saying,
Hmm.
and that is right there, and people are saying it more and more. Folks in, critical communities have been talking about it since it's been a conversation, but folks are saying it more and more. It's like, hey, so they go out and get
Well, it's
uh,
reached the
poor,
streets because it's now been laid bare, right,
yeah,
with
yeah,
these files.
yeah, and the levels of, as the word depravity, because of the, the kinds of actions these people are involved in, and the kinds of activities, their proclivities,
The
they're
various,
subject
the various allegations, right,
these young people to. Yeah,
and witness accounts,
right.
and of course we know there is photographic and video evidence, right, of various things too,
Yeah,
whoever was involved, right. The
yeah. Does
Yeah,
does he
and we
retain the capacity to compromise
that's right,
his
exactly.
friends?
Hmm.
Interesting. I'm
Hmm.
sorry about to say, and we. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, what I was just thinking about what you're talking about, right? The vulnerability of those seeking, stardom, or just a job in the industry. We who have grown up here in Hollywood and know, how long has that been the story of Hollywood, that Hollywood films have even been made, meta Hollywood films, right, about, you know the casting couch, and
right, right.
and all the various, rumors about what one must do if you want to make it, and rumors and facts, right?
Right.
About what
Right.
people must
Right.
do if they want to make it in the industry. And again, here in Los Angeles, right?
Hmm.
We are in the imperial propaganda capital,
Woo.
the the moniker, the entertainment capital of the world, and it's
Mhm.
appropriate. And even if in the last year or so, and partly as a response, reaction to the artist strikes that went on, right? The actor strikes and the writer strikes, and that went on. There haven't been as many movies made in the local area, but we're talking about film, television, music, advertising, modeling, you know, along with all the other various kinds of entertainment that become available, right? I mean, at Disneyland, if you work at Disneyland, you're not an employee, you're a crew member, right? I'm
Mm.
sorry, you're a cast member, right? You're a
Mhm.
cast member.
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
and again,
Mhm.
so we're familiar with it, right? And we know the things that people are asked. And in some ways, I often think about those of us who have grown up in Los Angeles,
Mhm.
and it
Mm.
seems like everybody in Los Angeles, and I do mean everybody, right, is in some way
Mhm.
connected to somebody connected to one of these industries, right? It's
Mhm. Mhm.
whether it's trucking or something, right? I mean,
Mhm.
it has been for nearly 100 years, like very much a company town, multiple companies,
Mhm.
entertainment company towns, right?
Right.
Along with everything
Mhm.
else, right? I mean, there's so much of
Mhm.
but that part,
Mhm.
right? That entertainment, and
Mhm.
we all know the stories, and of
Mhm.
what
Mhm.
happens in Los Angeles, and those of us, right? Who grow
Mhm.
up here, and in some ways can almost be unaffected by it, right? Because it's just such an everyday kind of notion of what life is like, or can be like, or the folks who are want to having to deal with that or want to deal with that. Everything we know, that again is being being exposed to the world in this very particular way,
Mhm.
going
Mhm.
beyond sort of the entertainment industry, right? Again, we had just had the
Mhm.
refresher with the
Mhm.
Weinstein cases and all that, right? Of what
Right.
happens in
Mhm.
Hollywood, right? What happens in the
Mhm.
entertainment industry. And
Mhm.
these files, again, just really demonstrates even folks
Mhm.
who were not engaging in any of the parties or
Mhm.
sexual activity,
Mhm.
but still
Mhm.
maintaining particular types of relationships,
Mhm.
uh,
Right.
for
Mhm.
to help Mr. Epstein do this, that, or other, rehabilitate his image, whatever, right? Um, and of course, clearly, his efforts or his handlers' efforts, right, as it continues to be, look more and more likely that he was indeed some kind of agent, right, for some,
Right.
um,
Right.
to make sure he was connected to all the
Right.
various, elites in all the various sectors, the well-known, the
Yeah.
photographed with whatever, right,
Yeah.
running in those circles. But who else? You run in those circles, right?
Right.
Um,
Right. Right.
but so the last part of our title, though, right, and the end of democracy, um, because these very people, right, this very
Yeah.
elite, um,
Mhm.
whose depravity has been exposed. There's always been a notion of
Mhm.
it being there, right? I mean, even if
Right.
folks wanted
Mhm.
to, even if the QAnon whatever, right, wanted to focus it in on their political enemies as just the Democrats,
Mhm.
there was nothing unusual um, about this notion of elites, that are preying on children, right, and are preying on people, period, right?
Mhm.
The and that has forever, been, part of a discourse and people's experience, right? Life
Right.
experience is the best
Right.
political educator in many ways, right? Um,
Right.
the abuses of nobility, right? And
Yeah.
uh, the yeah, just those things, right? The abuses of nobility, all right, and their
Okay.
notion of the rest of us, right? And who's
Mm-hmm.
worthy and all that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I saw a comment somewhere on one of the social. I think it might have been on Threads. Maybe it was on Instagram. And I mentioned, maybe it was last week. I can't remember, that some of this stuff is reminding me of the artwork of Kara Walker, the
Mm-hmm.
plantation.
Mm-hmm.
Was it
Right.
Plantation Fantasies, Plantation
Right.
Phantasm? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and somebody, I just read that again. It wasn't a direct reference to the artist, but people are learn. This was the behavior on plantations, and
Of course. Right.
plantations everywhere, right?
Right.
And before
Because
plantations,
yeah.
it was the practice, right, of elites
Right.
to use
So
people as they would.
yes, be right. A couple of beats back, that's where my brain was going. That it manifests in any of these sets of human relations where
Mhm.
there is a class of owners and a class of owned. You know what I'm
There it
saying?
is.
Where even if
Mhm.
it's owners and workers or however you describe it,
Owners
master
and
slave,
dispossessed, owners and
there's
ownerless, just yeah.
owners and those who do not own, but become perceived by these owners as one or another kind of property, at least
Mhm.
that the
Mhm.
bodies and labors and all of these things are at the
All of the
disposal.
various things.
They're
Exactly.
at the disposal, right? There is no
Exactly.
notion of the, as you did earlier, the equal humanity of, um, and more, of course, we know there's the attempt to supplant that as the new ethic, new going ideology, eliminating this notion
Exactly.
of empathy, eliminating these false liberal, or however they're calling them. They think they're calling them liberal. That's one of the things, at least they
Well,
call them.
liberal in that broader political sense, right?
Human, these inaccurate notions of human equality, and that are utterly
Exactly.
absurd, and we're going to put right and to impress these and popularize this notion of some kind of righteousness of the technocrat, that kind of thing. All of these things are of a piece, so they can the notion of attempting to reestablish this kind of very stark sense. And yeah, the always the understand there's an understanding, and then there is a quote unquote rumor, some a kind of an unspoken piece. A lot of this being trickled down, as the you just said few beats back, people's lived experiences, yeah, trickling down as storytelling and unsubstantiated, right? um but still present, right? As an understanding, but with all of this mask torn off, this moral high ground, or kind of this notion of the moral supremacy, or moral, some kind of, moral supremacy. That's the only term I can think of, that the elites
Well,
are.
we are being returned to the notion that there are some people who are better suited to rule and should be the ones in charge. They're the best, right?
Mhm,
A recalibrated version of
mhm.
aristocracy. And in FDR, right, Franklin Roosevelt, and in some ways, ironically, though I don't think he meant it ironically. It's just that given his own class status, right? But he talked about
Mhm.
an aristocracy of wealth, right? A new aristocracy of wealth having been created, and yeah, and that has been the case, right? The
Mhm.
emergence of
Mhm.
the capitalist system, the
Mhm.
actual capitalist
Mhm.
class, not these
Mhm.
little minor capitalists or merchants or whatever, but the actual
Mhm.
owners of
Yes.
everything, right? Those who have
Yeah.
seized ownership of everything,
Mhm.
as a new type of aristocracy, right? So
Mhm.
the aristocracy of the blood,
Mhm.
planted
Mhm.
by the aristocracy of the economy,
The
right?
coin, the
The owners of
currency,
the
right.
economy,
Mhm.
and that has just been kind of and sort of you know at the time that bourgeoisie comes into political power, the war for independence that in the United States, the French
Mhm.
Revolution,
Mhm.
um, is also the same time that modern democratic principles are being articulated, even being articulated by them. Also, though, with the notion that they're the people and the rest of us are not, right? But
Mhm.
to
Right.
use the cliche, the genie was out of the bottle, right? So the democratic
Mhm.
drive was underway,
Mhm.
and now we're in a moment
Mhm.
where no, a they are these the billionaire elite, the new the new financial wealth aristocracy
Mhm.
are asserting no, we're the only ones who really should have the power to
Mhm.
rule.
Mhm.
And we know in
Mhm.
the United States, folks have been cultivated to believe if you're
Yes.
rich, you must be better.
Yes.
You must be smarter. You
Exactly.
must be more moral.
Right.
You must be prettier.
Right.
You must be all these things. God loves you more.
Yes.
And that's kind of been
Right.
significant
Right.
to, and this is an oversimplification, but I'm gonna oversimplify. That's kind of a fundamental of Calvinism, right? Which is
Mhm.
fundamental in
Mhm.
American,
Mhm.
founding ideology,
Mhm.
right? And
Mhm.
Calvinism's
Mhm.
predestination notions, and the idea
Mhm.
that if you are, or rather that your wealth is a sign of
Mhm.
God's favor,
Mhm.
right? So you must
Mhm.
be better, right? And even
Mhm.
people who aren't Calvinist, that
Mhm.
is, as you said, that those are the narratives that have filtered down and through, um, very much coming out of or as a function of the very successful propaganda work of the entertainment industry rooted here in the Los Angeles area. Rich people are better than us. They're
Mhm.
smarter than us. They're more
Mhm.
beautiful
Mhm.
than us. They're more
Mhm.
spiritual than us. They're
Mhm.
all the wonderful things. And now they want to, and they have the right to rule. And that
Mhm.
idea, right, is what they are
Mhm.
pushing now. Um,
Mhm.
and the time is right for it because it is wedded to this push for Christian nationalism that says the same thing. The worthiness may be a function of faith or whatever, but makes the same assumptions and supports those, because they aren't interested in democracy either. Um,
Mhm.
because they aren't interested in democracy either. You can't have democracy and be a
Mhm.
Christian nationalist, because it's top down, right? It's top down.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
we got all that coming together,
Mhm.
and maybe personified or no fully embodied in the person of Peter Thiel, right, with his
Mhm.
weirdly
Yeah.
religious techno
Yeah.
feudalist.
Yeah.
Watch out for the Antichrist. Is democracy
Antichrist
the
stuff.
Antichrist? I mean, it's but this is the moment though, right? That we're talking about. The contradictions are being made clearer.
Mm-hmm.
People are being disgusted, and the system is not
Mm-hmm.
working for anyone
Mm-hmm.
but the rich, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that the current Trump regime may have a committed 30% cult base following, but that's still a minority, and really an over and that's a minority, right? That is still a minority. People are feeling it, right? They're feeling the pain, and they're not going to be able to continue to manage it. They're not managing it, right? They're doing everything to make it harder. In fact, um, it's what are folks going to do with that energy? Because as you were mentioning, Adam Mockler, who was a self-identified Democrat, but got but the Democrats aren't doing what they need to do, and that's a common refrain among people who I think would do the same, identify themselves as Democrats or progressive Democrats or independents who are going to vote for Democrats because that you cannot. How can you justify voting for this regime, but also recognizing? But they're still supporting genocide. They're still doing this. We got. Is there an insurgency that we can support? So that is going on right now. But so is, I think, or at least the time is right for people, um, and there's an appetite for it, right? For a socialist transformation, um, maybe even going beyond the democratic socialism of the Democratic Socialist of America to maybe socialist democracy instead. Um, but the time is right, right? And uh, which is why they're working so hard with organizations like Turning Point USA to specifically target high school and college students because it is among the young that capitalism has lost its glitter, right? And who are not um, turned off by the notion of socialism, a restructuring of the economy, an end to empire, an end to empire, right? Even if they don't know all the nuances of it, right? So um, it doesn't. It's the end of democracy as we know it, which has been very undemocratic for the most part, and opposed to people's democracy around the world. Our folks are, and we've had this conversation. How ready are genuinely left of the Democratic Party, folks on the ground, right? Socialists, ready to seize this moment, ready to offer that vision that the Democratic Party is not offering, and that the Democratic Party is doing everything it can to suppress within its own ranks and among a younger cohort, with the possible exception of Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. And for the moment, if you will forgive me, I'm going to leave out the questions of imperialism that they got to work with, right? That they're wrong on. But at least in terms of the domestic, if they can't do it, well, Trump keeps saying that his ICE, his ICE slave catchers are saving the country. There won't be a country anymore. The fact is, there may not be a country anymore, as it has been by the time this is all done. But what comes after going to look like? What is it going to look like for any of us and the many of us? Um, and what revolutionary parties are ready to do what about it? Um, and besides those parties, the American Communist Party, newly formed about a year or two ago, the Revolutionary Communist Party USA, all the various socialists, the Party for Socialism and Liberation, and the others that I'm not even mentioning. What are they prepared for? I know that the African People's Socialist Party is looking at a unified socialist Africa with citizenship for Africans wherever they are in the world. But I think a notion of, repatriation for those who, want to come build. I think that, and I believe that's the same vision for the All African People's Revolutionary. In fact, I know it is, right? Whatever the various differences between them, I know that that's the case, right? One unified socialist Africa, that's home ground, with citizenship for Africans wherever they may be in the world if they choose not to return to the continent, they still have citizenship. Even this poor excuse for unity called the African Union that keeps failing at least has the notion of the diaspora, both the contemporary diaspora and the post-independence era and the historic diaspora of the last 500 years as the sixth region, right, of the African Union. At least that idea is there, right? It's there in concept. They can't figure out the passport yet, but at least the concept is there. So whatever their vision is Africa and cool, right? Repatriation is a must. But what about the folks in the United States, right? And what that's going to look like for Turtle Island with what's next. What are people doing to prepare for what's next when everything that was is being torn down, purposely destroyed, and being purposefully destroyed by these same depraved elites who do not want, who are done with democracy, right? With the democratic experiment rather, regardless of whatever lip service they're giving to it. And again, you may note they often don't use the language democracy. They prefer democracy, equality. They don't use that language. They use the language of freedom. Freedom.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That they can make mean whatever they want it to mean because it don't have to mean democracy for them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and shifting, being able to kind of shift in that gray zone, that language gray zone, freedom, liberty, liberalism, these kinds of terms that, have taken on these different kinds of meanings, and have this like kind of a wide range of assignment,
Mm-hmm.
liberalisms to uninformed ear sounds like, what does this mean? Another age of social acceptance of marginalized groups, or, so yeah. And so in that gray zone, it's part of that no man's land of who's going to seize the narrative, and project
Mm-hmm.
that void clarity, because
Mm-hmm.
these folks can, like, what is this part of the what's being popularized to shift the notion of of the favorability of democracy, of the moral correctness of inclusivity, and moving toward more and more social equality and democracy, right? Spreading and
Mhm.
distributing power and giving more people access to political power. And one of the mechanisms, as I think we've discussed before, and I know we talk about all the time, um, is this kind of iteration, or this kind of pushing of this language, and this kind, or what I'm trying to find, the word is discourse. This discourse of, well, it's it's not a democracy; it's a constitutional republic. We live in a
Right.
republic, a constitution. You know what I mean? This
Yeah, I do.
play, this language,
Exactly.
where where
This
folk can
subterfuge.
subterfuge, absolutely. This forked tongue,
Hmm.
the art and science of forking the tongue, and can point again this population that has been systematically, that is barely literate, right? If half the
Intentionally so.
population, right, half the population is reading at a sixth grade level, and the rest is the gambit from more than sixth grade through, you know,
Hmm.
doctoral level kind of understandings of and all that that implies, right? So, yeah, folks can be introduced to ideas and literatures, and like they can assert rightly, right? The founding fathers never intended for black people, women, and all right, to have play in power. Look, it says right here, da 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 da, and to the oh wow, you can almost feel the sense of revelation, because
Hmm.
who knew? Who's been taught about the how that access actually expanded, and that's no secret. It's no
Right.
secret that, what I'm saying, that the founding fathers like Tad Sturmer, reteaching, and doing the bites on, this has always been about being a white ethno state. This is what the intention was. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah, yeah,
that
exactly.
serves as but since that is, uh, a false secret, it's shrouded in a secret that's in plain sight, the secretized by undereducation, you know, it can, add to that. Read like some kind of revelation, read like, for young people too, oh, getting on the train of what's correct and what's, and did you know, and da 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 da, and anyway, um, like the young man telling me in one of the classrooms I was in an extended period of time, saying that free speech is good, but not the government, and he was wanting to go, toe to toe
You
on.
distorted. What was that? Free speech is
I'm
good.
sorry, student. Yeah, yes, I believe in the free speech in the First Amendment, but not to speak against the government. That's too far. You can't do that. I said,
Hmm.
well, that's kind of what the First Amendment is supposed to be about, the liberty to be critical of the
Hmm.
centralized power. And he was ready to, no, 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 that's not it, that's not it, and but
That's
and
very
that was something.
interesting. It makes me wonder if he was, a churched young man,
i
where that is
think that
often taught.
I think that, yes, I think that he was, some of the conversations that we had, um, in and around that, because we had a couple of engagements, during the year. Good exchanges,
Mhm.
where it was like, oh, okay, well, actually, I haven't heard it presented that way before. I didn't hear that, so it was cool. But yes, I believe he was churched. definitely a churched young man, and exposed to some other kinds of these kinds of influences. Who was the dude who was, can't call his name right now. He'll come back to me, but he's one of these manosphere dudes, and he was like very popular. He was on every he was in everybody's mouth. I think he was a professor somewhere. Was he based in Canada? I don't know. What was it?
I
I'll
couldn't
remember
tell
his
you.
name in a minute. Huh? Yeah.
I couldn't
If
tell
I
you.
say his name, if I say his name, he'll be like, "Oh yeah, that guy." But anyway, it's very popular for men. And so the young man says, "Well, have you ever heard of so and so?" And he's saying that so and so and such and such. And what do you think about feminism? And what do you think about patriarchy? What do you think? And so yes, all of that is to say, um, being as effective um, in uh, re-inspiring critical thinking, re-engaging uh, that coming out of the, what is it, the post-truth era, what is it, the post-fact
Yeah.
era, you know, um, is
Thank you, Brooklyn.
critical in this
Brooklyn
moment.
Ross.
Jordan Peterson, thank you. That's who it was, Jordan Peterson.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I'm thinking of Jordan Peterson. Thank you, Brooklyn. Yes. And thank you for tuning in.
Mm-hmm.
That's who I'm thinking of,
And
Jordan Peterson.
participating.
Yes, absolutely. That is so wonderful. Um, but yeah, so, young people um, are also an appealing target, you know, for
Mm-hmm.
all those reasons, the
Mm-hmm.
impressionability, the zeal with which they embrace um,
Mm-hmm.
ideas,
That's why I asked if the young man was unchurched, because that is a very specific teaching,
Mm,
that those in government are put there by God, and even in a democracy, then that would mean that God was guiding the hands of the voters, right? And therefore
mhm,
should be above criticism in that way, right? Or I mean, so I can see that kind of religious logic informing that response. And Jordan Peterson,
mhm,
speaking of, I mean, wasn't
mhm,
that also part of his move? um, I think he may be one of these rehabilitated, or a Catholic convert, or a rehabilitated, conservative Catholic. I'm not positive about that though, but I think so. Um, and it's striking to me as I think about how we grew up, and for so long, right, that was the boast of the United States. You could talk about the president, right? You could
mhm.
criticize the
Right,
president and not
right,
be arrested or whatever, right?
right.
Um, and now there's a generation of people. Again, that religious ideology is a minority ideology, but that has a majority of power right now, right? And has
Mhm,
been cultivating that power for decades. So
mhm, mhm,
how far we have fallen. Even in
mhm,
the
mhm,
imperfect democracy that has been the United States. There's that kind of normie historian, U.S. historian position that
mhm,
the real history of the United States is the history of that extension of the franchise, right? That extension of the rights of
mhm,
citizenship to to
mhm,
white men
mhm,
of no property, right? Just those
mhm,
extensions, to
mhm,
up to this moment. And of course, we know, as we've been talking about in various forms, that's everything they're trying to roll back, right?
mhm,
The rollback of the 20th century, the rollback
mhm,
of the 19th century. even,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm. Mhm. Taking
Um,
over the notion of this is who we are. And they have
yeah,
that make that assertion and this question of who are we? You know, what is the
yes,
national character about? You know.
yes. What is, and we're being told what the national character is about is not that move toward democracy,
Right.
but the establishment of a Christian nation, right?
And it's always been a Christian nation and all these notions. And it's very interesting also. We read Brooklyn's comment. Thank you both. I
Hmm.
come from this white settler background, so I'm very familiar with it. And
Hmm.
yeah, I get that, not from a quote unquote white settler background, but if you are, I think it's fair to say, if you are not diligently seeking contrary information, all of
Hmm.
our default
Hmm.
is white settler myth. We all
Hmm.
identify with with that mythology. And if it's not
Yes.
specifically uprooted with other information over a period of time, then
Hmm.
we all live that and we all know the story. And because I was just about to say, the way this propaganda um, machination, and what I've always called the bright bardization
Hmm.
of
Hmm.
of the sphere, which we've come to learn is before the bright barding and before the Bannon um, masterminding, and it's bigger and deeper than Bannon, but having such a
Hmm.
an
But
expansion
he's an important
of
player.
just he's a huge player, and the
Hmm.
strategies of just say any MF thing, you say anything, just freaking lie, just tell
Yeah.
these wild stories, and people believe wild stories because some of the things that have anchored people to fact are those anchors are loose for a whole lot of cultural reasons, also. And that delitterization, and that de-education and all of those kinds of pieces, all those kinds of
Yeah.
pieces. So the thing I keep trying to move toward in saying that the way this propaganda mechanism taps into common sense inaccurate common sense notions, inaccurate common sense understandings and sensibilities,
Hmm.
is also part of its energy, part of its
Hmm.
rigor,
Yeah.
even as inaccurate as stuff is, and particularly the notion of the Christian nation founded in the name and the notion of Christianity as such, um, etc., etc. And the way the tap into the grievance politic, right?
Hmm.
And of course,
Hmm.
the strongest one
Which also
being this
relies
notion,
heavily on, I'm sorry, the strongest one being.
the strongest one and the one played from not time immemorial, from the colonial period through effectively through today, is the notion that poor white masses, poor white people, these people of color, and now poor white man, this female, right, is taking your place, is getting what you have coming, and it's because of their, machinations that
Hmm.
you're being displaced. So hence the anti DEI stuff that is very palpable, the great replacement propaganda that is it's tasty, it's appealing, it's recognizable, it appeals to this common sense grievance that you know uh, um, white folk
Well,
collectively
a lot of that
drawn to.
grievance, right, or what is presented to support the grievance is this appeal to common sense, right? Appeals to
Mm-hmm,
common sense,
mm-hmm,
and we know common sense isn't, right? Or
mm-hmm,
what is the saying? It's very common, but very little sense.
Mhm.
But it's important, right? I mean, it is an important tool in their toolkit for control, and has been, right? This appeal to
Mhm.
common sense, because it sounds rational, right? And it
Reasonable. It
might
has a
even
logic.
it
Mhm.
might speak to your experience in a particular way, right?
Mhm.
But often is not rooted in any fact, right?
Mhm.
It's common sense, but it's not factual sense.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
what's it's just commonly held belief, is what it
Mhm.
is. And of course,
Mhm.
we are also are not encouraged, um,
Mhm.
and partly, the public is not
Mm.
encouraged, through, again, the gutting of education for decades now, and the really careful control of narrative content, right? And in
Mhm.
entertainment, certainly
Mhm.
since the McCarthy period. Um, so folks aren't encouraged to investigate their beliefs, right?
Mhm.
Investigate why we believe this to be the
Mhm.
case, or what is it? What are the facts that make it this case, right?
Mhm.
Um, and again, I keep coming back to the religiosity, because it has been so prominent over these decades, in in
Hmm.
in um, what is the incepting, I guess, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Those notions, the notion that these common sense notions,
Mhm.
including the
Mhm.
idea that some of these things are unquestionable.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and
Mhm.
I know over the years I've seen it. I'm certainly, when I was still a high school teacher. Now that's been a long time ago, but I mean, in some ways, that's the point. Even when I was teaching high school, the last time I was teaching high school was in the 1990s, and there was already a sense that I was seeing some students, um,
Mhm.
to not want to investigate why they believed what they
Mhm.
believed, or that
Mhm.
even that
Mhm.
that a question like that should even come up.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
Missing the point. For
Mhm.
example, if they were Christian,
Mhm.
of the Philip Roth story, The Conversion of the Jews, which has nothing to do with Jews converting,
Mhm.
but with a Jewish boy in Hebrew school preparing for bar mitzvah, just
Mm.
asking some philosophical, theological questions
Mhm. Mhm.
that the rabbi did not want to answer in any kind of thorough way, or
Mhm.
engage the boy, because as the narrator says, what he wanted to know, what he wanted to know was always different, right? But it's just a
Mhm.
kid exploring, and some of the Christian kids, because of their particular filter, only understanding it as the Jewish boy witnessing for Christ. Said no,
Mhm.
that's not
No.
what's going on, right?
Right.
Um,
Mhm.
or and sometimes this might come from um, some Jewish students who might be from a conservative Jewish family, or even
Mhm.
Orthodox, maybe, um, and some of the Christian students, that it's just inappropriate to ask the question. Right?
Mhm.
Um, and the question the boy asks, right, the character Ozzy asks, is not if God could incarnate Jesus, or no, that's not even the question. To use the language of the story, that God could make Mary pregnant without intercourse.
Mm.
And Ozzy is not
Mhm.
asking, did God? But if God can do all these
Mhm.
other things, why couldn't God? That seems pretty easy.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
within the story, the character is really impressed by the creation of light, So figures,
Mhm.
light would be much harder to create if you're
Mhm.
God.
Mhm.
So just,
Mhm.
making a pregnancy happen seems pretty easy. But it's
Mhm.
just not did God, but could God? Is this within the realm of what we, the possibilities of what we mean by when we say God, right?
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
and for a certain number of students reading that story,
Mhm.
Ozzy should not have asked that question. Right?
Mhm.
And that's a change I've seen over years, though, right? That
Mhm.
um, where whether that question should be asked
Mhm.
is a response, that's closer to us in time than it
Mhm.
was the first time, first times
Mhm.
I taught that story, right?
Mhm.
In the
Mhm.
90s.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so for me, anecdotally, right, just marking a change um,
Mhm.
in what kids are willing to, what students, right, are willing to engage, what they've been encouraged to engage in
Mhm.
school
Mhm. Mhm.
and church, even, I suppose, but certainly in school. Um,
Mhm.
so we're
Mhm.
we're we're well after 8. I was just
Mhm.
going to add this one thing. I've mentioned to you before coming up in a tradition, or at least, with being familiarized with this idea in terms of faith, coming from a faith tradition. It's a faith that seeks understanding, that requires, an investigation of one's faith, um, belief and disbelief, and the willingness to challenge, to have your faith challenged. Um, but that is not that kind of tradition, um, which I think it is found in many religious traditions, outside of various Christianities, that there's that's a path in a lot of, religious traditions. The faith that seeks understanding, right? That does not just believe because you were told to. But that again, that is the sort of thing that is being um, suppressed, discouraged. You shouldn't do that. It's sinful. Those who rule you in
Right.
all forms of leadership are there
Yeah.
because of God, right? Or
Divine
they
right. A
believe Him,
kind of, yeah.
the kind
Yeah.
of divine right.
And
Exactly.
it translates, it's
Mhm.
easy to awaken because it hasn't been you're talking about coming from, and you often talk about coming from a specific kind of um, religious education tradition that, as
Mhm.
you just says, encourages faith and faith with understanding, whatever you just articulated. I'm sorry, I don't have the
Faith that
exact
seeks
phrase, but
understanding.
that seeks understanding, the faith that seeks understanding, the above all this, in all that get an understanding, kind of, that
Mhm.
and that which is, as you've often described, unafraid of the to reconcile the scriptural with the scientific or the empirical or
Yes.
the these kinds
Yes.
of the
Yes.
material, those kinds of things, right? And accepts
Mhm.
that as even like kind of a joyful challenge, and I want
Mhm.
to use the term challenge, just part,
Mhm.
there's simply no conflict, with that,
Right.
which is, again, as you said, and that also, that kind of approach is
Mhm.
discouraged in this in this mode of thinking that
Mhm.
is right, where blind belief is part of the substance of subjugation. That is, where does that not
Mhm.
manifest itself, you know what I'm saying, in
Yeah.
a subjugator subjugated relationship, whether it's in a micro, right, interpersonal
Mhm.
relationship, or
Mhm.
these larger kinds of spaces. And so, yeah, folks will have to double down, in and folks are very can do that very well. in that faith space, or what they are, in that um, in the space of, because of my commitment to belief, no matter what is being, if something appears to draw me from this particular belief, that thing is of the devil, in terms of the
Right.
right the
Yeah.
traditions that
Yeah.
I was familiar with. I wasn't
No,
Catholic.
that's
I
right.
wasn't Catholic.
Yep.
I was in a, you know what I'm saying, in a different
Mm-hmm.
kind of a Baptist kind of
Mm-hmm.
Church of God in Christ. Those were,
Mm-hmm.
the Black church traditions that I was exposed to, and that was the language of the devil.
Mm-hmm.
And that,
Yep.
and you could easily get rebuked in the name of the Lord for
Yep.
um,
Oh my Lord, yes.
discomfiting someone from their um, belief base with
Right.
a challenging language. When
Right.
I was part of a African centered, um,
Mm-hmm.
organized spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not giving names and I'm not giving hints, and I'm not, you know what I'm saying? But a very important part of that doctrine was that if too much thinking got in the way of the, you know, of your
Yes.
ability to adhere to the ideology and to be humble with the ideology, then
Yes.
that
Yep.
was, you're just closing the road. That's your, your faculty of thinking, closing the way to, your higher, what I mean? So that's a
Mm-hmm.
feature
Mm-hmm. Yes, it
of,
is.
and it can show up anywhere. So it's not just in this
Mm-hmm.
faith, that faith, and this, it's a feature of something
It can show
more
up anywhere.
fundamental. It's a feature of, yeah, it's a feature of control. It's a feature of of
Yes.
a hierarchical
Closed ideology. Yeah.
piece, right?
Yeah.
And so um this challenge, part of that challenge is to reawaken, not, I feel very strongly myself, not to convince with another ideology, but to
To
reawaken the
reawaken.
human spirit to that curiosity, that wonder, that ability to
Mm-hmm.
reflect, intellectual
Mm-hmm.
honesty, the things that
Yes.
are, the all of the qualities bequeathed upon us,
Mm-hmm.
as
Mm-hmm.
the kind of
Yes.
creatures we are, that
Yeah.
have led us to create all of the things that we as human beings can consider
Mm-hmm.
awesome and beautiful in the world,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and all that, something I've been wanting to say tonight in this discussion relative to the depravity issue, um, and all of this being of a piece with the attempt to, again, upend or to um, discredit democracy, squelch it, squelch
Mm-hmm.
people's, what neutralize people's attachment to the idea, all of these kinds of things, um, is the ability that people have to compartmentalize information, and to, we talk a lot about connecting the dots, right? We have such a great ability to not connect dots,
Mm-hmm.
so we are at, and I'm no different, absolutely scandalized and absolutely disgusted and absolutely, with all these kinds of things. At the same
Mm-hmm.
time, we have statistical information that lets us know that what, 1 in 5 girls, 1 in 7 boys is, experiences molestation. You know what I'm saying? This is
Yes.
multi-generational. This isn't new. So we all know someone, if it's not us, you know what I'm saying? We
Mm-hmm.
ourselves, who has been, you know, engaged in, and the same will be true of our parents and our parents, you know what I'm saying? But when it is presented, before us, we are like, oh my goodness, what is this? It's like, well, it's what the statistics have been telling us, the
For a
statistics
very
about
long time.
a
Yes,
very
I
long
know.
time. Statistics about sex trafficking, about child sex trafficking, about sex tourism, about, right? All of these pieces, put before us. But I do think that is a very, very powerful um, this pulling again, the way it challenges our ability to compartmentalize that belief in the goodness of the wealthy that you're talking about, right? And the moral high ground and their righteousness to rule and make decisions for us and be the experts and what and all of these kinds of things, that this depravity is exposed, right? It challenges that, being able to put folks in that compartment when it's so blatantly exposing there is nothing about this class of people that puts them in any more moral, any more better moral position, to govern. Why are these people making choices? Is might really right? All these kinds of things. Is it really okay? There was was it one of the creators I watched? It was Hawk. I think it was Hawk, our favorite, podcasters, um, doing his, thing of the
Mhm.
look at this, and another of these young together creators was in discussion with a MAGA person who thought they were, delivering a zinger, in saying to the person, okay, so what's wrong with child rape? What's wrong with child rape? And the person literally could not respond, was just stunned by the question. He was like, I didn't think there could be, that there's a possibility that we could get to this low, this kind of bottom, you know. But the guy was like, so are you just gonna stare? Are you just gonna not say? Are you gonna respond to the question? And doing all that, the MAGA deflection, undebate techniques, and doing all of the things. He's like,
Mhm.
no, I'm just absolutely stunned that we have to establish an agreement that child rape is a bad thing. What's wrong with raping children? Did you really just ask me that? What can you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
here we are at
yeah.
one of these incredible um, contradictions. Here it is. What do you do with that? Anyway,
Mhm. Mhm. That is right.
guess what? It is only straight white men in the Epstein Files. That's the other piece. Saw another great a commentary today by a trans. Uh, well, actually, I
Mhm.
don't actually know. Person is not cisgender. They're not trans either. The comment, though, because they are a queer community, was about um, this question. Like, oh my subscribers want me to make a
Mhm.
comment about the Epstein files. And my comment is this. My question is this: how many people, right? How many trans people are in the Epstein files, right? And he's like, no, you think I'm going to say none, but actually there was one. And he tells the story of a trans woman who was victimized as a young woman, right? When she was about 16, right? Victimized by Epstein in 1999, and was in 2007 decided to pursue and bring suit, right? So this is
Mhm.
2007. And essentially
Mhm.
what happened at the time was the story became about her being a trans woman and, you know, making absurd her claim, therefore, you know, only to have
Yeah.
these revelations legitimize. It's like, oh,
Mhm.
this is the same story they all tell, you
Mhm.
know, bringing her in with the lure of being a Victoria's Secret model,
Same
and then you
story.
find
Yeah.
yourself caught up. But because they are trans, and so what the commentator, said, he says what he said was that what it is demonstrating is that trans women are subject to the same kind of violence
Mhm. Mhm.
as non-trans women, from the same
Mhm.
group, cisgender wealthy white
Yes.
men and cisgender white men in general,
Yes.
in terms of who
And
have
as
that.
you have mentioned, boys also.
And
And
boys also, and
yes,
boys as well. And
yes,
that is
there
just
are,
not,
my understanding, some of those
yes,
accusations in the files also, or allegations, whatever they want to call them. Right. So,
whatever they want to call. And
yes.
that we're
Which
missing
again, I
comments.
just think, of everything I've ever learned about ancient Roman
Mm-hmm.
history and,
Mm-hmm.
the Roman elites'
Mm-hmm.
use of anybody and everybody else, and certainly the enslaved
Mm-hmm.
population of Rome, which I believe is the most
Mm-hmm.
population of Rome, perhaps the Roman Empire,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
etc. Right? That this
Mm-hmm.
there is a cultural continuity and certainly kind of a class continuity, to
Mm-hmm.
this, and and that has. I mean, we got to enjoy, in a pop culture moment, right? That as we watched the end of Game of Thrones, episode, and as they're picking the new king, and the
Mm-hmm.
Tully character says, "Well, what if, right? We let the people who are going to be ruled pick the ruler, right?" It's a
Right.
it's a wonderful moment, right? I mean,
Right.
it's
It's
even a
great.
light moment as they
Yeah.
all nobles sit there in silence.
Right.
And what did you say? What
That's it. Wouldn't it be
are they
funny
going
if
to
they
laugh?
all laughed?
And then they all laugh, right?
Right.
How preposterous! And
Right.
what does one of the characters say? Well, I guess we might as well let the dogs vote also.
Exactly. The mules, the
But it was
cows,
art really
or the cows, not
capturing.
the mule. Yeah.
The art is capturing that real sentiment.
It's a
I
real
mean, that is a
sentiment, and we
real
better get ready.
sentiment for how
Yeah.
long?
Yeah.
For millennia. That is at least in the Western world, right, or what is called the West, and not only the West, but certainly
No.
very
We
much in the
can, yeah.
West. You know,
Right.
in this very um, inhumane, I mean, it's a way, right? It's just that, yeah,
Yes.
we if you aren't the new nobility, you are just another one of the animals to
You're
be
a plow.
used.
You're an
Just
implement. You're a
domesticated.
tool.
You're a tool.
As
Hence
not as
the
Nancy
very real term cannon fodder. Right
as Nancy Eisenberg said, the mudsills of the
there, you
upper
go.
class, that there is a underclass of people that are simply here to support us. They are the material basis, the
They are the
awful,
material basis. Yeah,
literally
and they
the
are not meant
compost. They
to
are not meant
rule.
to
They are not
participate.
meant to
They're meant to
engage in creating policy and these notions of
any of
democracy.
these things,
Right, so,
and now that and so the choice right, is incumbent upon us. So what do we do going
right.
forward with
So what
this,
do we do
sitting
going
at
forward?
in this particular space and time, having access to all of this reflection on human, which is never going to be right a complete picture, but we got enough to make an assessment. So what kind of world do we want to have? That being said, I want to read Brooklyn's comments as well. As we were talking about the straight white men in the Epstein files, and talking about that whole issue, Brooklyn says, Brooklyn Ross 7950 says, people like me get attacked and accused of being a sex predator because we are LGBTQ, which is one of the enduring tropes, enduring myths. Oh, they that same gender loving people are predators, are child predators, are pedophiles, right? How I came up hearing that, right? Oh, well, so and so is gay, so you better watch your child around them, or all these kinds of things. Because absolutely. They go on to say, meanwhile, the real predators walk free, while people like me have to live in fear with absolutely no criminal records, wearing the cloak of criminality. It is the same as I think Cornel West these days is talking about niggerization. And it's the cloak of criminality, right? We
That was
walk
the
in.
language we used after the September 11th attacks also. Now
Okay. And
other Americans were understanding what it meant to feel. But so he's come back to that. Okay.
yes, in recent, in some recent interviews after the killings of uh
Hmm.
Freddie and
Yeah, very
Viv.
recently. Hmm.
Yeah. And absolutely. Um so right, there's an opportunity to end that. There's an opportunity to end this this othering and this, because the accusations are always the same. Oh,
Hmm.
this
Hmm.
other group is criminal. They're coming for your children. They're gonna somehow damage, murder, exploit, your children. They are in, whatever character flaw, any of that which is distasteful to human society. They carry every antisocial trait. The accusations are always the same, right? And yes, Brooklyn Ross, we will be liberated one day. Yeah,
We
we
liberate ourselves.
liberate ourselves and live like it, live that way, and stop giving these people this power, because God complex has to be propped up, by a worship complex, so yeah, that part.
So it's not the end of democracy. It may be the end of democracy as has been um, underimagined. This, bourgeois democracy for the few, really, very much like,
Mm,
the Western democratic models, right? Athens, a democracy for the few, and the Roman Republic. At
mm-hmm,
it's not a democracy; it's a constitutional republic, which is, yeah, a form of democracy. Okay, shut
mm-hmm,
up. A form of
mm-hmm,
elite democracy,
mm-hmm,
but it doesn't have to be, right?
mm-hmm.
We are on the mission to create a genuine people's democracy, and there are other models for us to
I
be
was
looking
just
at.
about to say, absolutely.
There
Please
are
go
other
ahead.
models, and like everything, right? Nothing is a finished product. Everything is in process, a work in progress, right? So anyway, it's 8:32.
We've done our time. That's
I
right.
think we can say good night.
We can
Brooklyn, thank you so much.
come back
And you are
again.
very welcome. I know you
You're
thanked us earlier, and I wanted to make sure to say thank you, or rather, you're welcome,
yes.
and thank you for being here. I also
Mm-hmm.
want to repost this because I wanted to make sure I got his name right. Mike Figueredo from the
Mm-hmm.
Humanist Report. And I do recommend folks check out the Humanist Report. Um, and with that, yeah, I guess we can say good night. We can make the announcement. So, first of all, let's do the thing. Please subscribe. Um, thank you for those of you watching live. Thank you. And anyone who watches this later, thank you. And please subscribe if you haven't done so. Please like the video to help us with the through the tyranny of the algorithm. And by all means, share. We are typically here Thursday nights, 7. Well, we start at 7, usually 7 to 8:15ish, 8:30ish, 8:45ish sometimes. But typically that hour and 15 or so. And sometimes, something gets posted in between the Thursdays. We will not be here next Thursday.
So there'll be a
Most
recording up. We're planning to have a recording up.
Oh, great. We're going to do a recording.
Yeah.
The next
But we'll be here. Talk will do. Yeah.
Okay, so there will be something. So never mind what I was going to say. As
Still
we're
relevant because we
trying to
won't be
go
able to
to
do
on Thursday nights, on the second Thursdays of the month, a poetry reading, Trenches Full of Poets, at Page Against the Machine, a bookstore in
that.
Long Beach, California.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we're trying to be. So we'll have a recording up. Okay, great. We won't be here
Yes.
live, but we'll be here. And so with
Yes.
that, Any final word, Tasha?
Yes, since we have cited some of our favorite YouTube creators, I'm going to read a comment. Again, a proxy creator who you don't always know who these people are, and I wish I could credit them. But I can't because Hawk was doing this. He was pointing to a creator who made the comment I'm going to read, and then went on to do a very humorous takedown of the red carpet outfits, right? Um, but he began his short with the word. Well, let me see. The world is run by a cabal of sadistic, psychotic billionaires, and our only hope for a just and free society is to throw off the shackles of capitalism itself.
There we go.
And then he
I
went
mean,
on
that
to,
is fundamentally it.
that was it. It took him 5 seconds to say, and then he went on to do his comedy. And that is
Mhm.
fundamentally it.
That is
So those are
fundamentally
my
it.
last
Yeah,
words. Yes.
yeah, that's right. Okay,
Okay.
so that is a great final word. So I will close as I always close. Again, thank you all. Let me leave you with the words from poet, prophet, revolutionary Bob Marley from the Natty Dread album. The song is called Revolution. Revelation reveals the truth. It takes a revolution to make a solution. So let's make a revolution, y'all. And we'll see you next week. Record it.